The European Commission says the level of corruption across the European Union is breathtaking. In its first ever report on the problem, it estimates that corruption costs the economy $162 billion every year. That is the equivalent of the European Union's annual budget. No EU country is free from corruption. 99% of Greeks think corruption is widespread in their country. And 75% of companies who were polled say corruption is common in their state. Well, the EU Commissioner for Home Affairs says the opinions of those Europeans surveyed is very clear.
Vast majority, 76% of Europeans, think that corruption is widespread in their country. More than half of the Europeans think that the level of corruption in their country has increased over the past years. And 1 in 12 Europeans have experienced or witnessed corruptions in the last year. 4 out of 10 European companies consider corruption to be an obstacle for doing business in the EU.
Well, Al Jazeera's reporter Kim Vanel is live from us from our broadcast centre in London. Kim, a damning report there. What more did it have to say?
Oh yeah, this has been a very frank assessment from the European Commission. As you mentioned, very large sums of money are being lost to corruption throughout the European Union every year. The report mentioned that the financial crisis pushed lots of governments in the EU to implement new anti-corruption strategies, but that they haven't necessarily always been effective. Now, in this speech from Commissioner Cecilia Malmström, she spoke generally about the problems associated with corruption, talking about it hampering economic development and undermining democracy, but the report itself goes into specifics country by country. Now, some of the standouts, not necessarily for the right reasons, Greece, as you mentioned, Bulgaria and Romania. The report says that corruption remains widespread in these countries, that Greece in particular, institutions there are under pressure, and that the frameworks to fight, the legislation to fight corruption is very complex, and 99% of people there think that corruption is widespread. That's the highest out of all the EU member states. Some of the good, on the other hand, Denmark, Finland, Germany and the Netherlands. Now, the Netherlands in particular, it was mentioned, had a really integrative approach to tackling corruption, and therefore that model could be passed on to other countries.
Really interesting how it breaks down country by country in the European Union, Kim. But given some situations are so bad, does the report have any suggestions about improving things?
Well, it does. One of the main things that the Commissioner mentioned is that the political will to tackle corruption must be there, and that it's not always the case with every country in the EU. It explained that it's a particular problem in Romania, Spain and Italy. Italy, one of the suggestions there was that elected officials need ethical codes and accountability tools, while Spain needs to tackle political corruption. More generally, it suggests that accountability standards should be looked at, conflicts of interest and how that is managed, and also just ensuring that criminal proceedings to do with elected politicians are not obstructed.
Kim Vanel with the latest there from London. Thanks so much.